think there might be one or two more students coming, but I'm going to get started and try and keep an eye on the waiting room. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacy Shimizu. I'm in the international office, and we coordinate study abroad. Joining me today, we have 3 alumna of last year's Pembroke program. If you don't mind introducing yourselves real quick, I'm going to go Samira, Rachel, and Jenny, because that's how you are on my screen. Samira, yeah.
All this time on Zoom, and I clearly. My name is Samira Kassam. I am a political science major and an advocacy pre-law minor. I'm a senior this year, and yeah, I spent last year at Pembroke with Rachel and Jenny. Is that good for introduction?
Yeah.
I think that about covers it, yeah.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a senior. I'm in English Lit and Psychology double major, and I studied English at Pembroke last year.
My name is Jenny. I was also in Pembroke last year studying economics and philosophy, and I'm an economics major, senior year.
Okay. So I've got a short little video that kind of gives you a broad overview of Pembroke. I'm going to show that, and then I think what I'm going to do is maybe just sort of open it up to questions. We'll start with the alums who want to elaborate on any part of the video. And then any questions that you as individuals have about the application or about the program or about Pembroke College. The one thing I would say is, although the presentation is about Pembroke College, that's not the only way you can study at Oxford. It is a particular relationship that Illinois Wesleyan has with Pembroke College, but through our partnership with Arcadia Abroad and IFSA Butler and IES Abroad, it is also possible for you to study at some of the other Oxford colleges. All right, I'm going to share my screen and, oh, need to make sure I share the sound.
The Pembroke Program, Junior Year Abroad at Oxford. Pembroke College is one of the 39 colleges that constitute Oxford University. Founded in 1624, the college is named for William Herbert, 3rd Earl of Pembroke. In the fall of 1997, 6 IWU students became the first participants in the program. The Pembroke program offers a unique opportunity to study a subject of your choice in an intensive tutorial setting. This prestigious and competitive program is open only to sophomore students with a GPA above 3.7. Visiting students have full membership in the college, with all the rights and responsibilities of fully matriculated students.
What is Pembroke like? According to the Pembroke Alternative Prospectus, there is no typical student at Pembroke and the student body is diverse. Yet the majority of Pembrokeans, whether they study here today or graduated decades ago, tend to sum up the college in strikingly similar terms. Small, friendly, informal, and, obviously, better than Christ Church, our esteemed rivals across the road.
The Pembroke program is a full year of study at Oxford. The academic year comprises 3 8-week terms: Michaelmas term, from early October to early December; Hilary term, from mid-January to mid-March; and Trinity term, from late April to late June. Students enjoy a 6-week break between each term, during which they can travel or remain in college.
Visiting students are admitted to a specific course of study.
A full list of subjects is available on the abroad.iwu.edu website.
But popular subjects for IWU students have been English literature, history, politics, philosophy, and economics, and psychology. The Oxford Tutorial Method.
At Pembroke, students do 2 tutorials each term. Each tutorial has only 1 or 2 students, and meets each week.
You'll have weekly readings and will write a 6 to 8 page essay for each tutorial.
In addition, you'll attend university-wide lectures.
And in the sciences may have labs and more American-style classes.
Pembroke uses a 100-point grading scale.
But your grades will be converted into the 4.0 grade system using a scale provided by Oxford.
IWU students receive 9 units of credit for the academic year at Pembroke.
Student life.
Visiting students live in college with first-year Pembroke students.
You will have a large single room with a wash basin, and shared bathrooms are down the hall. Outside of tutorials, students have access to Pembroke's many clubs and student organizations.
You might join one of the sports clubs or academic societies.
There are also theater and music groups, volunteer organizations, religious and cultural clubs, and more.
The college also has places where you can socialize, like the Junior Common Room and Farthing's Cafe.
Program cost and application process.
The costs for academic year 2021 have not yet been set. But this year's costs will give you an idea of what to expect.
For academic year 2020, IWU charged standard tuition and applied financial aid, as usual. Students were also charged the cost of a super single for housing, and a one-time Pembroke program fee of $1,000.
Be aware that these costs will certainly increase for next year.
To apply, visit abroad.iwu.edu and look for the Pembroke program. You'll find it by clicking the large IWU programs button.
The deadline is Friday, January 8th. So start your application during the December break.
The Pembroke program.
Stop. All right, I think I'm back. Having some trouble with my screen sharing. So Samira, Rachel, Jenny, things that you would add to that sort of quick overview of the Pembroke program?
I mean, I'm sure that people have questions about the tutorial system. I don't know, would you rather we try and explain it a bit or just let people ask the specific questions that they have?
I think better that you try to explain it, because it's hard to know what to ask unless you've got a sense of what it's like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I studied PPE, which is the politics, philosophy, and economics, and that would be anybody who is an econ major, a philosophy major, or a political science major. You'll probably do that because they don't have like just those on their own. You have to do them together. But I took mostly politics tutorials since that's what I study. And for somebody who studies PPE or any of the other kind of social sciences, you take 2 tutorials, and it's just once a week for 1 hour. And a tutorial is like, it can be, the highest number of students would be 3 students, but some of them, like I had one that was one-on-one. So it's like you and your tutor, which is like a professor. And then you have it for 1 hour once a week. You go in with your essay, and essays are usually like 6 to 8 pages, 2,500 words is what they said, but they're not super strict on the length as much as you just have to make sure that it's substantial and answers the question. You go in, I had one of my tutors had me like read the essay out loud in tutorial, and then they critique you as you go. So they would stop you and say like, what do you mean by this? And then you do that. Other tutorials, it kind of depends on the tutor. Some tutors will just have a discussion about your reading, but every week it's the same kind of schedule. So you really kind of, as you get further into the year, into the term, you get on a schedule and you get used to it, where it's, you receive your reading list, you do your readings, you write your essay, you go to tutorial. And then there's also lectures that are like university wide. So there's a lot of people in the lecture, and it's not like, you don't like ask questions, you don't like interact with the lecture. The lecture is purely, you just go in, you sit down and you listen to one of the Oxford professors speak about the topic, but the lectures don't always go together with the subject that you're learning in your tutorial for the week, because tutorials are very, like, you can decide how you want your tutorials to go. So like the tutors will normally ask, what do you guys want to learn about in this tutorial? And then you get the chance to decide together with your tutor what topics you're going to cover, when you're going to cover them. So it is kind of weird. It was weird that the lectures didn't like go together with the subjects for the tutorials for a week. But that's kind of like the gist of the tutorial system. You have a lot of time where you're not, because you don't go to class every day. There are a lot of days where you'll have nothing on your schedule, and it's like a lot of self-discipline because you have to like make yourself on that day go to the library and do your work instead of having here where it's like you have to go to class every day and it's more structured. There's not a lot of structure at all in the tutorial system. So if you like structure, you might not like it. If you are more independent, you'll do better. And you have to be ready to, I mean, they try to scare you in the orientation week and tell you that it's like a full-time job and you should be doing 8 hours of schoolwork a day. As you know, that's up to you really. You can decide whether you want to like spread your work out throughout the week. Some weeks I was good about that. Some weeks it was like scramble at the end and try and get everything together. So it's really up to you how your time goes. But I guess, yeah, that's kind of how the tutorial system works. Did I miss anything, Rachel or Jenny?
I think I would just add that every tutor takes on a different style when it comes to the tutorial. So like I know that Samira talked about how her professor would have her read her essay aloud and critique it. Like I had professors who would give me like a little mini lecture about the topic before going into my paper. Some are more like discussion based and talking about themes and other questions. So yeah, like every tutor makes the tutorial their own.
How many, what was the largest number of students in your tutorials, Rachel?
Because I was the only pure English student there, it was one-on-one tutorials all the time.
Okay, how about you, Jenny?
Mine had about 2 or 3 students at the same time.
Okay, and did you have to read your papers out as well?
No, I did not. I think my tutorials were more relaxed than the ones that Samira had, but definitely I had a lot of readings to do throughout the weeks, like sometimes 7 or 8 readings for every class. And yeah, it's just like a lot of work that, you know, you're expected to do at Pembroke. And then they will every detail on the readings, and you have to remember that. It was very cool. Yeah.
So when you say you had readings, were you given like a specific list? I want you to read these 7 things, or were you given like, here's a list of things on the topic. Choose what you want to read in order to write me an essay.
Yeah, usually my reading list will have 2 parts. So the first part is like the core readings, which include about like 4 or 5 readings, the most important ones that you must read. But then they will also give you like 20 additional readings that it will be nice if you read, and if you want to impress the tutors and read them, you know, but like usually we don't really have that much time. So you can read like the summaries of those readings somewhere on the internet just to get an idea of what they have to say.
And were these readings books, or were they essays or chapters?
Yeah, sometimes they are chapters from books, and sometimes, most of the times for my subject, they are articles from academic journals.
Rachel,
Can I pull up? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I have some of the syllabi from my tutorials. Could I share my screen and share that just to show them what that looks like?
Let's see. Make sure I can share with you. You can share all participants. You should be able to share.
Okay, yeah, I'll show you guys because it's kind of, I feel like it helps to see it.
While she's sharing, Rachel, did you have like novels to read, books of poetry, plays, articles? What was your reading list like?
Yeah, so typically I would be writing an essay about 1 or 2 pieces of literature, and then, like Jenny said, some core academic readings, and then optional readings based on where I wanted to take the essay.
Okay, so this is my syllabus from Politics of the Middle East. So it's just like, here, let me see. So, you know, obviously just the course description, all of that. The objectives, expectations, this basically just says your expectation is that you write your essays every week and that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is how she set hers up. You had 2 different essay questions to choose from every week. So you just go week 1, week 2, choose your essay question. And then here's the reading list and the weekly schedules. So like Jenny was talking about, with asterisks or double asterisks, that's like it's expected to be known. It says exams, but visiting students don't take exams, so that's different. So this is like introductory. These are the readings that we were supposed to do, or that we did do, but the readings that you have to do before the tutorial even starts. So this is kind of an idea, and obviously you don't read every single one of these, but the ones that have stars you were expected to know. And in this specific tutorial, we had a 0-week meeting. So in the week before tutorial started, we had a meeting to talk about the introductory stuff. These are just resources. So yeah, here's tutorial 0, so that's the week before. And then key issues and essential readings. And then here we got to the first tutorial, and this is the key issues, and then these are the readings. So essential readings are here, and then further readings. And once you pick your essay question, it becomes obvious which of these readings are more going to help you with whatever question you picked. So it looks really scary when you first get it, but you don't have to read all of these, but you do have to read a decent chunk of them. And because it's you and another student, or you and just the tutor, they will know if you didn't do your readings, and they will ask you questions to see if you did do your readings. So it's important that, you're dedicated to schoolwork if you do this program, I guess. So yeah, that's just a little.
Okay. So just a second, Nia, did all of you receive those kinds of like detailed syllabi for each of your tutorials?
Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
Okay. Yeah, Naya.
So I had a question about the terms. Like, it's like we're gonna be there for junior year. But like on the syllabus that you just showed, it said like Trinity terms.
Mm-hmm.
Can you like describe the terms, like what the year looked like for you guys?
So just to make sure, a term is an 8-week chunk of time. So are you asking like, how did the tutorial start? So Samira mentioned like a 0-week tutorial.
Yeah, so like basically like what would junior year look like? How, because there's 3 different terms from my understanding. So basically just what would the year look like and how is that broken up?
So you arrive in October. So you have an extra long summer break the year before your junior year, because you don't leave for Oxford until October. When you arrive, the first week is like orientation week, and then after that is when tutorials start. So at Oxford, they refer to, instead of saying the date, and you get used to this when you're there, it's like annoying at first, but instead of saying like, they wouldn't say like Wednesday the 5th, they would say like Wednesday of 3rd week. So like 0 week is the orientation week, and then you'll have, the first term is called Michaelmas, you'll have Michaelmas week 1, week 2, week 3, and that's how the syllabus, as you saw, was set up. So it goes, October through like Christmas time.
Yeah.
And then that's your first 6-week break. And then you'll come back after Christmas time and you'll go through March, and that's your 2nd term. And your last term goes from April through June, like mid-June. So then your summer break between your junior and your senior year is really short.
Does that give you sort of a sense, Naya?
Yeah, no, that helps.
Okay.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, so did you guys go home? Well, obviously I know COVID probably screwed you guys up, but for the first break, is it planned that you just kind of go home and then come back? Is that what a lot of people do, or do some people stay?
I would say from my experience, visiting students do tend to come home over the winter break because it corresponds with a major holiday. And that visiting students tend to remain overseas between Hillary and Trinity term. But I would say generally visiting students use that 6-week period between Hillary and Trinity to explore. So exploring either the UK or further afield. But as you're right, last year was a bit different for the three of them. Yeah. Did Jenny, you stayed over the winter break though, didn't you?
No, I did not.
No,
I
you
only
didn't?
stay break. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Jenny actually stayed at Pembroke for the full academic year, but clearly Trinity term was very lonely. Rachel and Samira both came back in at the end of Hillary term.
Are people there right now, even with COVID? So like next year, even if COVID was still a thing, would like people be able to go over still?
I have 3 students abroad this fall, and they are the 3 Pembroke students. So they are there. They did arrive early because they went through the 14-day quarantine. So they arrived sort of late mid-September. And then they were out of quarantine in time to start Freshers Week, which is the orientation week. So they're there now, they're doing their tutorials, they're living in college. I think the lectures, so Samir mentioned that lectures don't necessarily correspond with your tutorial. Lectures are organized at the university level as opposed to the college level. And they tend to hit some of the major topics that degree-seeking students would normally be covering in the year. So since your tutorials are kind of individually organized, they may or may not correspond with what the lectures are covering. So I think this year lectures are being remote and recorded, but tutorials are happening in person. Does somebody want to try to tackle the difference between Oxford and the colleges, or the relationship between the colleges and Oxford?
I've like attempted to explain this to my friends and family like a lot of times, so I can like try and explain it. So Oxford is the university level. It's like the broad thing that is above everything. So if like the best kind of way to think about it is if you think about like the University of Illinois, they have like UIS, UIC, UIUC, and then they have like business school, like different schools within the broader U of I system. This is kind of like that, but all of the colleges are like next to each other, kind of. Like when you walk through the town of Oxford, you see like all the different colleges. And the university employs professors and fellows, and then your college also employs fellows. So the university fellows are the people who are giving lectures and doing like the research that you'll see coming out of Oxford University. That's mostly the university level fellows. But then like the college level fellows, their job is more to interact with students and be tutors. So all of the colleges have fellows, and then your tutorials may or may not be within your college. So I had some tutorials at Pembroke, some tutorials at other colleges. I had some tutorials with Pembroke students and then some with students from other colleges. But basically your college is like your home base. So like you live there, you eat your meals there. If you need to like talk to an academic advisor, if you need to talk to whoever it is, you would go to the people at your individual college. So yeah, so you leave your college a lot, but that's kind of like your home. That's where you stay. And there was another thing I was gonna add. Oh, also like sports and societies and clubs. Oxford University has all of those things, but then every college has all of those things as well. So they do have, it's called Blues, which is like if you play soccer or you like row for the university, which visiting students can't do. So those would be like the people who compete against like Cambridge or compete against other universities in the UK. But you can play sports in be in societies and clubs within your college and participate fully. So like the football team at Pembroke plays like the football team at other Oxford colleges. Trying to think if there's anything else that you do at your college versus university.
Rachel, Jenny, things you would add?
Yeah, I would add maybe about a library. So for example, Oxford has like a system of libraries that you can use, but also in every college, you can have like a little library in the corner of your campus that you can have access. Like in Pembroke, we have access like 24/7 to a Pembroke library, but for like the big libraries of a university, you must wait for like a certain hours for them to be open. And then yeah, and then maybe about like student organizations. So there are student organizations that operate university-wide. So for example, like I joined the Peace Society, and every week we had like a meeting in different colleges. But I believe that we also have like student organizations that only some colleges have, but others don't. So yeah, you can choose like which one you enjoy to participate. Yeah, I think just that.
Rachel?
I guess to make it even more confusing, in addition to like the college and the university levels, there's also the departmental levels. So based on what subject you're studying. So like your subject will often have a library dedicated to itself, you know, and like certain events for your subject. But I don't know if any of this makes sense, but it will make sense when/if you go.
Yeah. It is a confusing system. If you think of Oxford University as sort of the bureaucracy, right? And then the college is self-contained. Every college has its own facilities. It has its own library, its own chapel, its own student housing, its own tutorial rooms, its own bar, its own pub. And as Samir said, you walk through the town and they are literally side by side. So each college is sort of a walled entity. And you may or may not be allowed to go into another college. They have certain days where people can go into the colleges and others where they're not open. So you have the bureaucracy, you have the college, and then sort of tying all of the colleges together are the faculty. And faculty in UK speak often means department or discipline, as opposed to a group of, the people. In the US, faculty often refers to the person or the group of people. So you'll have a faculty of English, and that is composed of all of the tutors at all of the different colleges who teach English. That's the faculty of English. The faculty of English has a library. So there's an English library. There's a politics library. There's a chemistry library. So when Samira says that you'll take, your tutorials might be with faculty at Pembroke, or they might be with faculty at other schools, it's because if you were a degree-seeking student at Oxford, your courses would be taught by the faculty of the discipline you're studying. So you would be doing tutorials at Brasenose or Oriel or Christchurch, because you have to for your degree. As a visiting student, Pembroke really tries to admit students that they can teach on their own, because to put the demand on the faculty at other colleges, it's a little pushy to do that. Visiting students will end up with some of those tutorials, but you're a bit more at the mercy of those individuals at other colleges and their willingness or ability to take on a visiting student, because degree-seeking students take priority. So this is one of the reasons why when you look at some of the colleges as a visiting student, like Pembroke offers a lot of subjects for degree-seeking students, but their capacity to accept visiting students is much reduced, because degree-seeking students will actually be doing most of their tutorials with faculty outside of Pembroke. Pembroke is really strong in PPE, politics, philosophy, and economics. They have a lot of in-house tutors and fellows to offer. So they do tend to accept more PPE students than other disciplines. Whereas other colleges that accept visiting students might not take so many PPE students. They might take more history because they have more in-house fellows, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So is the food better than Saga or no? No, I'm joking. What's the application process like in terms of like how many applications are received by IWU and like how many go?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a hard limit on it? And what is the application based off of?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll talk about some of those sort of mechanics of the application, and then the students can sort of talk about what they think you really need to focus on as you put it together. So one thing to keep in mind, students always ask me about sort of like how many students apply, how many students are accepted. The application process is different from what we experience in the US. So when you applied for university, you were applying to the school and there was an admissions, there's an admissions office, there's an admissions committee that reviews your application. The Oxford system, the people who review your application are the people who will teach you. So if I have 10 students apply, but they're each applying to a different subject, they're not competing with each other at all. Right? So Rachel, who applied for English, was not going to be considered by the same people who were reading Samira and Jenny's applications. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter how many Illinois Wesleyan students apply because they're not necessarily a competition. Wesleyan does not have a limit on the number of students we nominate or the students we allow to participate. So we have a two-tiered process. You apply to Illinois Wesleyan, your application is reviewed by the Study Abroad Advisory Committee. They see their job as sort of twofold. The primary purpose is to read your applications and provide you with feedback so that you can strengthen it. So there's a very small window where they try to do that. And then their secondary purpose is really sort of just to make sure that any applicant that we nominate really is, they think, a viable candidate. I've got to say, students who are meeting the eligibility criteria for the Pembroke program, I don't think any of them are going to look at them and say, no, you're really not a good student. You have to have the 3.7. So the Study Abroad Advisory Committee reviews you, and then the university nominates you. And at Pembroke, your application is taken by the tutors and fellows who teach your subject, and they review it. The application itself consists of an essay that you write, an application essay that you write, 2 samples of your academic work. So for most disciplines, that's going to be essays or writing, 2 letters of reference from faculty, an application form. It's not required by Pembroke, but I always encourage students to include a resume because that's actually an easy way to answer some of the application questions. Am I missing something else that needs to be submitted? That's about it. So I'll leave it to Jenny, Rachel, and Samira to sort of talk about what they think you should do in terms of putting your application together.
I think for me, the key to my application was getting very good recommendation letters from your professors. So just like come to your professor early and let them know that you're planning to apply to Pembroke, so that they have time to sketch out the plan for you, especially when you're not going to be in IWU for junior years and there are classes that you must take before you go to Pembroke, like the classes that you must take after you come back so you can finish your degree. Just talk to them early and build relationships with them if you have not, and that's how you get good recommendation letters. And also just if you're taking any classes that involve writing, the writings that you did for those classes can be your writing samples for Pembroke, and I think they do weigh importantly on those writing samples. So because you're going to do a lot of writings in Pembroke, so they will want to make sure that you know how to write and know how to do a strong essay. So I think those are the most important aspect to the application that I did.
I would also say that the personal statement is really important, and it is very important not to be basic, like not to, they don't want to like read an essay that's like, ever since I was a child, I wanted to study at Oxford, or it would be such an honor to study at Oxford, because they know, like they're very much like, duh, like we know it's an honor to study here, we're Oxford, like they don't need you to tell them how great they are because they know how great they are. That's kind of how, but you do want to do your research and talk about, I know in my personal statement, and this was advice that Stacy gave me, and she said, you know, look into the tutors that are at Pembroke and who you specifically look forward to working with, because it is the actual tutors that are looking at your application. So when they see their own name and you say, you know, I'm excited to work with this person, I really enjoyed their work about blah, blah, blah. I think that gets you major brownie points. So just really showing them that you don't want to go there just because it's Oxford. You want to go there because of the specific people that are there, the specific topics that they offer. So yeah, the personal statement is really, really big. And then take your, you know, in this, take your time to choose your writing samples and really look them back over and make sure that their quality, like Jenny was saying, it's very important that they know that you're a strong writer, and that you're prepared to write essays. Yeah, I would say those would be my tips for the application process.
And definitely start working on it early too. I know that the video mentioned to start during winter break, but even right now, just start working on it, because the personal essay in particular, it's short. It's 500 words, so it doesn't seem like it would take you a long time. I agonized over that thing for weeks, you know? Like you really want to make sure that you are presenting yourself as best in the best light that you possibly can. So make sure it's not last minute.
So I'll add a couple of things for the letters of reference. And this is just general advice about letters of reference. You want to talk with the people about writing a letter. One, you want to have an actual conversation, not just an email conversation. And you want to give them time to write a good letter. So, you know, my rule of thumb is you want to give them at least 2 weeks. I would say for Pembroke, have the conversation now before you leave campus. That gives them December to do it. Okay. You want to give them, you want to make it easy for them to write a letter. So certainly, as Jenny said, you want to approach faculty who know you. And if you've been reticent, all the more important that you have an actual conversation with them. But it's also good if you give them material. So a resume, give them your resume. It may be too early for you to give them a draft of your personal statement, but to have a conversation to talk about why you want to do this program, and then to say, when I have a draft of my statement, I'll share that with you. Right, so that they're not just working on their memory, they've got some of the things that you have put together that they can turn to. And a good letter writer will not only talk about you, sort of their experience of you in their class. If they know you well enough, or if they've got the information to do this, they'll put you in a context. So to be able to say, I've had this student in these classes, this is what I've observed about how the student learns, how the student thinks, how the student argues. But I also know that this student is deeply involved in these student activities. And so I can appreciate the way in which this student is able to balance or manage their time. Or although this student has studied this subject with me, I know this student volunteers in this organization and so has that kind of background. So give your referees, you know, material that they can that they can really work with. For the writing samples, if you have an essay coming up that, you know, you might sort of keep in the back of your mind that this could be a Pembroke sample. So think about that. For the personal statement, I think Samira's advice is really good. Just, and as Rachel said, it's, as they both said, you know, it's short, you want to make it count. So as you're writing it, as you're rereading it, anything that could be said by any applicant, get rid of it, right? It needs to be about you, about what drives you, what motivates you, what interests you, what you want to achieve, what you want to accomplish. You don't have to hit all of those, but you need to be specific to you, right? So I've always wanted to study in England. I've always loved the idea of Oxford. I watched all of these movies as a child. Yeah, get rid of them. Talk about, you know, what excites me about economics is this. What I really love about English literature is that. Looking at the tutors at the university, I'm fascinated by the fact that Dr. X studies this subject. Samira talked about brownie points. I think some of that is, you know, some of it's a little bit of ego. It's always nice to see your name mentioned. But some of it is also just demonstrating that you've done your work, right? You've seen those reading lists that you get for your tutorials. If you're applying to study at Pembroke, they want to know that you know what Pembroke is. Who are the people that work there? Who are the people you might study with? What are their areas of research? So that's just doing your homework also. And then the other thing I would say, as we try to describe sort of the difference between Pembroke and Oxford, remember that you are applying to Pembroke, not to Oxford. You're applying to the college, not the university. Other questions or other comments, things that you students would add?
What's the credit transfer like? Like the tutorials or whatever else you're doing at Oxford, like how does that correspond to coursework here?
So what I can tell you is Pembroke requires that their visiting students do 2 full tutorials a term. So full tutorial meets once a week for 8 weeks. Degree-seeking students normally do a full and a half. So one that meets every week and one that meets every other week. But degree-seeking students also have exams. And as Samira pointed out, Pembroke doesn't require you to do the exams. That's why they want you to do the more tutorial meetings. So for 6 tutorials total, 2 in each of the 3 terms, Wesleyan will give you 9 units of credit and 9 classes towards the 32 classes you need to graduate. How those will fit within your discipline, within your major or majors, that's between you and the department.
If I can just give a piece of advice. So if you guys are like seriously planning on applying and going for your junior year, make sure that you sit down with your advisor and look over your schedule and understand that you are not, like they don't have gen eds there and you are not going to be allowed to take tutorials that are not within your subject of study. So you will not be like knocking out any gen eds while you're over there. And also like in terms of like foreign language, I took a French class like they have a language center. So I took it at the language center, but it doesn't just like come over as a credit for a French class. Like I had to show the head of the department that I like had learned enough to be able to be in the next French class. So it doesn't just like transfer. So that's really important that you meet with your advisor, you sit down, you make a plan. and you're prepared to not get any gen eds out of the way, or foreign language. That was the one thing with me, is I almost really, because I didn't have my foreign language, any of them, and I had to like figure that out, because you only have 1 year when you get back. So don't make the mistake I did. It'll save you a lot of stress.
What about in terms of your 6 tutorials, how many of them, I think you guys could probably speak personally, how many of them like carried over, not for gen ed, but for your major requirements or minor requirements?
I think all of them but one, and then the other one was just an elective. So the majority of them. And I was even able to get the head of the department to give me like an IT flag with one of them. So you can do stuff like that. You just have to, like, throughout the year, I was just sending my syllabi to the department head just to like say, hey, this is what I'm working on this term, so that you can be in that conversation as you go, instead of at the end when you get back being like, here's everything I did. Yeah, everything transferred over. In terms of grades, like I got like 50-60% in all of my tutorials, and those were like A-minuses. So don't forget about that. You will get your first paper back and want to cry, but like it's not the same thing. So remember that for sure.
Rachel, how many courses did you get towards English?
Yeah, I was able to get 6 courses towards English, so the majority. And yeah, like Samira said, I was able to petition for a CHC credit as well. And yeah, I guess just, do we want to talk about the grading system at all?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Go
I'll
for
do my
it.
best. I don't remember the names for them. So like Samira mentioned, it's out of 100, but really don't expect to get above a 60. Like if you get a 90 on a paper or a 90 above, that means that it's like ready for publication in an academic journal. So like, do not aim for that. So I think a 60 is a first, and then there's like seconds. There's like 2.1, which is like a B, and 2.2, which is like a
B minus.
I'm bad at this. I don't remember.
Yeah. If you watch shows about the UK, people might say, well, I took a first in history at Cambridge. That's like cream of the crop. That's, summa cum laude. A second is very respectable. If you're getting below a second, you're sort of a C student. But they do break seconds into sort of 2 levels of second. And both of those are acceptable, but of course 2.1 is better than 2.2. So how did you each react when you got your first grade? Do you remember what it was, or is that just too traumatic and you've wiped it from your memory?
I mean, thankfully, neither of my tutors first term gave me grades, which was like good and bad. So I was just trying to work on improving my own performance each week and wasn't really worried about like, okay, is this paper an A? Is this paper a B? So I don't know if like.
So you didn't get one on each paper, you got it at the end of the term.
Yeah. So you can talk with your tutor about that too and see what is more helpful for you to get a numerical grade or just like written verbal feedback.
Jenny, how about you?
I think for my tutorial, my tutor kind of knew that it would break my heart if he gave like a low grade. So I think the first one I got like 60 something, which is like a second first or something like that. It was like sort of okay. Yeah. But like some of them would never give you a grade until the very end of the term. So that's very, that you might be anxious about like, oh, did I get like an A or a B? You never know.
I would say, so one of the students who studied at Oxford last year, he studied at a different college, St. Cat's, Keegan. And he studied economics, and he talked about problem sets, optional problem sets that he would be given. like 7 questions. We call them challenge questions. And he told the story of these 7, he got 4 right, and he was just devastated. Like, I'm an idiot. What am I doing here? I can't, you know, I got half of these right. And to get 4 out of 7 challenge questions is, you know, you're killing it. He was doing not just adequately, he was doing a fantastic job. So it really is a readjustment of your standards, or, you know, what represents good work. Would you guys, because you did do so much writing for each of your tutorials, would you talk a little bit maybe about the similarities or differences between what's expected of an essay at Pembroke versus an essay here in the US?
Well, I mean, oh, sorry. I was just saying, doing it in a week instead of doing it like I mean, you guys know, if you were assigned a 7-page essay here, you would probably have like, that would probably be like your term paper. Like, we don't really get assigned essays that long as often. So there is an understanding that you're doing it in a week. And it isn't as like in depth. It's more of like, you do the readings and then you kind of express your thoughts on the readings, and it's formal, but it's not like as formal as like a term paper here. So it's more broad, and it's not specific like research points, like data and numbers and that kind of stuff. It's here's what I read, here's what I thought about it. And this is the argument that I would make, like that kind of essay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, going off on that, it's definitely the ideas of your paper that are the most crucial. Things like formatting and style, they don't care about that. It's really just about like, did you read the material? Are you able to synthesize it? And are you able to form a persuasive argument?
I think for my major, it was very different from the one that Rachel and Samira had. So I never had to write essays for my econ class in IWU because we only do like math most of the time. But in Pembroke, like studying econ was only about like 90% of the time was about writing essays. So I learned to write essay. I think the first time when I arrived at Pembroke and like did my very first essay. So I would say that it was very hard at first. And I learned like from the very basic step, like how to write an introduction, how to structure through the essays, how to tie them all together into a conclusion. It was very hard at first, but I wouldn't say that it's impossible to learn during a short amount of time, especially when you have so much pressure. So you will get better quickly if you're not familiar with it in the first place.
I remember like that just reminded me of a very specific conversation that Jenny and I had. We like ran into each other in our staircase, and I just remember like we were talking about imposter syndrome because it was like the first term. Yeah, and I just remember like we were both kind of like, oh my God, what are we doing here? Like, because you're with, I mean, the other visiting students are from like Ivy Leagues, like they're from some big time schools, and you're constantly put in these situations where people are like, you're with other visiting students and they're like, oh, what school do you go to? And everybody else is like, I go to Cornell. And you're like, I go to this tiny school in Illinois. Like, but yeah, it is hard. It's hard to remind yourself that you wouldn't be there if you didn't deserve it. And that was kind of like, I feel like when Jenny and I talked about that, we were both like, okay, like we both feel this. It's not just me. So you will get better as you go. And I just remember being very overwhelmed when I first arrived, but it gets better and you gain confidence. And I feel like that's just remind yourself, like, I wouldn't be here if I didn't deserve to be here. And Oxford, there have been years that Wesleyan students that nobody got to go. So it's not like they accept someone every year. It's really a big deal getting accepted. So don't forget that if you get to go.
Yeah, and also be proud. Oh, sorry. Oh, I would also just say, like, be proud to be from Illinois Wesleyan. Be proud to have that small liberal arts education, because I think that Oxford really made me appreciate that. I think some of the most memorable times in my tutorials is when I've been able to like pull from other disciplines from my classes here and say like, oh, this relates to something that I studied in psychology, or I think that this might be an allusion to something from my religion class, or like, did you think about this like Japanese proverb and how it might tie into, how it might be a reference to this. So like those are honestly some of my favorite moments from the tutorials, because that makes it more of a collaboration between you and the tutor. And that doesn't happen unless you have that liberal arts background that Wesleyan gives you.
What I would say about the essays, you know, the American system is sort of geared to have you turn in your best possible work, right? So you'll see scaffolded assignments where I want you to give me your thesis, I want you to give me your reading list, then I want a draft, and then I'm going to give you comments. And for most of those steps, the faculty member takes it and goes away and scribbles all over it and hands it back to you, and then you go and you polish and you polish and you polish. And the Oxford system is not about the polish. The Oxford system is about the diamond in the rough, right? They want to see that you can understand ideas, that you can process ideas, that you can formulate an argument, and you can polish it later. I want to see that you can do those fundamental things and do them within a week. So what Wesleyan faculty have said to me is that sometimes it's a bit of a challenge when a student comes back from Pembroke, because you're accustomed to be able, like, my ideas are solid. Who cares about the presentation of them? My ideas are solid. And the Wesleyan faculty are like, no, that's not enough. That's not what we're looking for. We want the ideas, but we then also want you to shine them up. But that's also why you're not writing 8 essays in most of your classes at Wesleyan, right? You're going over the work that you're doing to make it sort of sparkle. Real quick, I know that we're coming up on 5 o'clock. Just a little bit about the housing. So Samira's mentioned staircases.
I mean, they're like dorms basically. You know, I think Pembroke has like what, 18 staircases, and or I guess maybe you think of them as like halls, more like the halls within your dorm rooms. And so you typically get a single room with like a sink inside, and then like a communal bathroom, and then I don't know, the building, like, it's kind of cool because you're living in a castle. I think that's really neat. I don't know, Jenny, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I don't know if we can choose a room as visiting students, but I know that some of my friends had very good rooms where they had like a sink in the room, and then they had like a whole bathroom inside. And I think most of the rooms are pretty spacious compared to like rooms in Munsell or Ferguson. So you will have a lot of space, and they're beautiful. Yeah, just that.
Yeah, so just remember that Pembroke is really small. It's about 400 students. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to add that what I didn't like about dorm in Pembroke is that you will have to pay to do laundry. So yeah, it's like about like £2.50 every time you do laundry, but it was, it was something. Yes, you don't do laundry a lot. Unless you have to, yeah.
Yeah. And to go back to Kevin's question about the food, I want to talk about the quality. So you'll get charged for food in 2 different ways. There are dinners, so hall, and hall is sort of broken into formal hall, which is very much the Harry Potter thing. You got the black robes and the white shirts and all of that. And then the other, when it's not a formal hall, it's dinner. So formal hall is served. The other dinners are sort of come and get your dinner. So that's one charge, and then a separate charge would be for the other meals. And that's a bit more a la carte, how much you know, it depends on what you eat. And that gets put on your battles, which is your bill. And I would say there is definitely competition between the various colleges in terms of who has the best food and who has the worst food. A couple of years ago, I had students at 5 different Oxford colleges, and I'm sorry to say that Pembroke came out kind of at the bottom of the list. But I've also had plenty of students who've come back and said that the food is certainly no worse than what you get at Sodexo, and many have come back and said that it's better. So, all right, I don't want to keep you because I know that we're coming up on the end of the semester and your schedules must be absolutely crazy. I'll follow up to you all with an email with some links to some of the things, a link to the video, a link to a conversation that Jenny did with Keegan and Professor Tooney about studying at Oxford. And I'm sure that Rachel and Jenny and Samira would be happy to answer questions if you wanted to reach out to them by email as well. And I'm also available, so just shoot me an email. All right.
All right, thanks for your time.